The fluorescent lights of Sterling and Sons hummed with a sickly yellow glow, casting long, distorted shadows across the empty cubicles. It was 2 a.m. and Mark, the sole night security guard, was on his usual patrol of the 17th floor. He hated the 17th floor, not because of anything specific, but because it always felt cold, even in the dead of summer, and the silence up there was never truly silent. It was a silence that whispered, a silence that watched. Tonight, however, the whispers felt louder. Mark gripped his flashlight tighter, its beam cutting through the gloom. He'd been working this gig for 3 years, and while he'd seen his fair share of weird stuff, a forgotten stapler vibrating inexplicably, a coffee machine brewing itself, nothing had ever truly unnerved him. Until now, it started subtly, a faint scratching sound, like nails dragging across concrete, coming from the server room. Mark paused, listening. It stopped. He dismissed it as the building settling, or maybe a rat. But then it started again, louder this time, accompanied by a soft, rhythmic thud. Thud, scratch. Thud, scratch. He approached the server room door, his heart beginning to pound against his ribs. The door was a heavy, reinforced steel monstrosity, always kept locked. He tried the handle. Locked. He pressed his ear against the cold metal. The sounds were definitely coming from inside. "Hello!" Mark called out, his voice a pathetic squeak in the vast silence. "Is anyone in there?" The sounds ceased abruptly. A profound, suffocating silence descended, heavier than before. Mark waited, flashlight beam dancing nervously. Nothing. He shook his head, trying to rationalize it. Maybe a maintenance crew? But he hadn't been informed. And the sounds, they weren't mechanical. He continued his patrol, but the unease clung to him like a shroud. As he walked past the executive offices, he noticed something odd. The CEO's office door, usually shut tight, was ajar. Just a sliver, but enough to catch his eye. He remembered locking it himself during his last round. Hesitantly, he pushed the door open further. The office was dark, save for the faint glow of the city lights filtering through the large panoramic window. He swept his flashlight across the room. Everything seemed normal. The imposing mahogany desk, the plush leather chairs, the framed accolades on the wall. But then his beam landed on the desk. A single, pristine white rose lay in the center of the polished surface. Mark frowned. The CEO, Mr. Sterling, was a notoriously practical man. Flowers were not his style. And where had it come from? He bent closer, a strange scent hitting his nostrils. Not the sweet fragrance of a rose, but something metallic, like old blood. He pulled back sharply. He checked his watch. 2:30 a.m. Time to call it a night, he thought, a cold dread seeping into his bones. He decided to finish his rounds quickly and get out of there. As he descended to the 16th floor, the elevator made a soft, almost imperceptible ding. The doors opened. The floor was completely dark. Mark had just turned off the lights on this floor less than 20 minutes ago. He pressed the button for the ground floor, but the doors remained open, revealing the inky blackness beyond. A faint, almost imperceptible movement caught his eye. Something shifted in the darkness at the end of the long corridor. He squinted, trying to make it out. It was too far, too dark. He felt a prickle of sweat on his forehead. "Close!" he barked at the elevator, hitting the button repeatedly. The doors slowly, agonizingly slowly began to slide shut. As they did, he saw it more clearly. A figure. Tall, gaunt, standing perfectly still. It wasn't human. Its limbs seemed too long, too thin, and its head was tilted at an unnatural angle, as if broken, and its eyes, two pinpricks of pure white, seemed to bore into him from the darkness. The doors finally clanged shut, plunging him into the relative safety of the elevator car. He let out a shaky breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. He hit the ground floor button again, and the elevator began its descent. He tried to calm himself, rationalizing. It was just his imagination, the late hour playing tricks on him. But the image of those white eyes, that broken neck, was seared into his mind. When the elevator reached the ground floor, the doors opened to the brightly lit lobby. Mark practically sprinted to the security desk, fumbling for his keys. He had to get out. He had to. As he reached for the main door, a sound echoed from the elevator shaft. A soft, wet thump. He froze. He looked back at the elevator, its doors now closed. The indicator light above it showed it was on the 17th floor. He stared, bewildered. He had just come down from the 16th. How could it be on the 17th? Then the elevator dinged again. The doors opened. This time, the lights inside the elevator were flickering wildly, casting strobe-like shadows. And standing in the center of the car, facing him, was the figure. It was closer now, much closer. He could see the details. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched taut over what looked like bone. Its mouth was a wide black chasm, devoid of teeth. And those eyes, they weren't just white, they glowed with an internal, malevolent light. It took a step forward, its long, spindly arm reaching out. Mark stumbled backward, tripping over his own feet. He scrambled to his hands and knees, his mind screaming at him to move, to run. He crawled towards the main entrance, his fingers scrabbling at the lock. The figure was moving slowly, deliberately, its footsteps making that same wet thump sound. He could hear it breathing now, a ragged wheezing sound, like air escaping a punctured lung. He finally got the door unlocked, pulling it open with a desperate heave. He burst out into the cool night air, gasping. He didn't look back. He ran. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs ached, not stopping until he reached his car, parked several blocks away. He sped home, the image of the creature burned into his retinas. He didn't sleep that night or the next. He called in sick, then quit his job, never offering an explanation. He knew no one would believe him anyway. The months passed. Mark tried to forget, to move on. He got a new job, a day shift, in a busy supermarket. He avoided tall buildings, especially after dark. But the nightmares persisted. The pale skin, the glowing white eyes, the wet thump of its footsteps. One evening, he was walking home from his new job. It was late, but the streets were still somewhat busy. He felt a chill despite the mild weather. He picked up his pace. Then he heard it. Faintly at first, then growing louder. Thud, scratch, thud, scratch. His blood ran cold. He spun around, frantically searching the street. There was no one there. Just the usual evening crowd. But then he saw it, reflected in the darkened window of a closed shop. A tall, gaunt figure standing perfectly still, just behind him. Its head was tilted at that unnatural angle, and its eyes, they glowed. Mark didn't scream. He couldn't. He just stood there, paralyzed, as the reflection in the window took a slow, deliberate step forward. The scratching sound grew louder, closer. He could feel the cold radiating from it, seeping into his very bones. He closed his eyes, wishing it was a dream. When he opened them again, the reflection was gone. He turned around. Nothing. Just the street, the people, the normal sounds of the city. He tried to tell himself it was his mind playing tricks again. But then he felt a cold, skeletal finger brush against the back of his neck. A whisper, like dry leaves skittering across pavement, slithered into his ear. "You left the door ajar, Mark, and now, I'm home." He never made it home that night. His car was found abandoned blocks away from his apartment. The police searched, but found no trace of him. The case went cold, just another missing person in the city's vast records. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls just right around the old Sterling and Sons building, the remaining security guards swear they can hear a faint, rhythmic thud scratch echoing from the 17th floor. And sometimes, if they're unlucky, they see a single, pristine white rose lying on Mr. Sterling's desk, its metallic scent lingering in the air.